And we are back again. And now we want to kind of give you some examples of how we work with dog body language and how this comes into the concept of dog-initiated interactions. So first of all, there's three kind of parts to working with your dog and letting your dog initiate the any interactions with a potential trigger. First of all, there's the idea of understanding what body language means. Second, we want to look at what particular body language is your dog giving at any particular moment. And third, how can you let your dog know you're listening and prepared to help that dog if necessary. So some of the techniques we use, they're more not really training techniques so much as kind of hacks. So kind of basic things that we use that are designed to kind of help understand what's going on with your dog and help them deal with a given situation. So they're not really things that are done like you're going to have a very specific method, like the dog is going to sit, you're going to click, and then you're going to reward your dog. They're not they're not training techniques. They're more just like things that we use to help the dogs, to help us be able to see what the dog is saying, to help us understand the dog, and to help us communicate that we're listening.
And these are they're fluid things, so they're going to change here and there. When I'm working with my own dogs, it's hard to see sometimes, but if I'm in a class with Jeannine as my instructor, she can see from the outside in what my dog is doing, and especially if my dog's at the end of the leash, I can't see her face. So it's very helpful to have an outside perspective, which is why I love training, and I'm still taking classes after 6 years.
And so yes, being fluid is very important. So these are just things designed to kind of make a little bit of a framework to help your dog through things. They don't have to be done the exact same way. And most of them we start by using treats, but once the dog starts to understand what's going on and that these hacks are leading towards understanding of the dog being understood and that you're listening and that you're helping them, those things start to be rewarding in and of themselves. So typically we don't need to use food. So again, it's not about like luring or training or establishing a particular behavior. And something that's very important in this is that there is no right or wrong. This is not the dog must complete this exercise. It's the dog is telling you what they can do and how much of it they can do. So one of the first things we use is kind of based on some techniques that Leslie McDevitt has created in her Control Unleashed program. They're different than what she's doing, but they kind of have come from a similar place. They've kind of grown out of the wonderful program she's created. But the pattern games that she made involved using like a target or a bowl. And we start with teaching our dogs those things so they know how they work. But we also, we're more about listening to what the dog can do. And it's not about necessarily making an approach. And it's not so much about the pattern as it is about just the communication of the dog. The patterns, we do teach patterns in our classes a lot, and thank you, Leslie McDevitt, for your wonderful work on pattern games. But But this is not so much about teaching a pattern to help your dog cope. It's about giving the dog a situation in which we can watch how they are responding to the trigger that they may potentially be presented with. So we're going to show you two different versions of this in a video, and the first version is how we handle a dog approaching a trigger. And the second version is how we handle a trigger approaching a dog. So if your dog, in the first example, we're going to have the dog moving towards a stationary trigger. And second, we're going to have a trigger moving towards a stationary dog. And so here we go. Here was our first video. We use the dog looking at the handler. Is the dog giving permission for the handler and himself to move forward towards the trigger? And we observe the body language and what the dog is expressing to us in terms of, can the dog look at you? Is the dog hypervigilant about the rest of the surroundings, about other things that are going on? Is the dog disconnecting from the approach? Is the dog turning its back on the trigger? A number of very different, and you'll see some of these things here in these videos. But it's not, the goal is not to get to the end of the targets, which we have laid down, which is based on Leslie McDevitt's work. The goal is not to get to the end of the target. The goal is for the target to be more about something that the caregiver, the dog's caregiver, can focus on to help them move in small increments with the dog. So each step is kind of like, all right, the dog is looking at me, that means it's okay to move forward. And right now my dog is not looking at me, so now I either have to back up or do something else. The second situation, which is usually much harder for the dog, is for the dog to remain stationary and have the handler, a trigger, whether it's a dog or a person or a fake dog or a scary object, whatever it is, for that trigger to move closer to the dog. And what we do usually with that, instead of approaching straight on, which can be threatening to the dog, we kind of use a flank, so we have the dog moving kind of around, so not directly into the dog's space. And you'll see how that's different, so the dog is not being approached in a threatening fashion. And what we do differently there is we use the dog looking at the trigger as a means of the dog saying, yes, it's okay for you to approach. And you'll see a lot of some differences in there where the dog may be looking and staring at the person. This is where you need to understand what the dog is saying. You don't want to approach if the dog is staring at you. You want the dog to give you a glance and then look back at their handler. So a calm, comfortable, soft glance and then forward, back to their handler. The second thing we do is a hack called Scent in a Pillowcase. And this is simply trying to based on the idea that 40% of the dog's brain is based on their nose. And that when a dog is using its nose to experience its world, to process its world, that it is going to be better equipped to understand what is going on rather than when it is using its eyes or some other sense. Of course, using all the sense together is fine, but we, as we said before, we live in a world that discourages sniffing, and we also very often, the dog's caregiver doesn't want the dog to sniff. We see this a lot when you have competition dogs. And yes, that's fine if you're, doing a heel or you need your dog to focus on you for agility training. But we always need to remember that the dog's brain is geared to work with an animal that primarily uses its nose. So, not saying that it's not okay for your dog to focus on you. We are saying that it is also very, very, very okay for the dog to process its world with its nose. So what we do is we have pillowcases, and you'll see this in the video coming up, and we put scent in it. We start with some food in it, maybe just to get the dog to be interested. But then we'll do things, we'll add things like dog fur. Go to your groomer, get some dog fur. Maybe socks or clothes that smell like a human. We have bought all sorts of jars, tubes of scent of different animals. We have scent from bear to pheasant to rabbit to rat to deer. Deer stinks, by the way. Deers are worse than bears. And we'll put a little tiny drop of that onto maybe the dog fur or a Q-tip and put that in the pillowcase so that there's lots of interesting smells. And no, this does not teach your dog to want to go after deer or bears or coyotes. It does not teach that at all. If you ever go on a hike off leash, a dog already is going to find deer poop and roll in it. There's a good chance that your dog may want to do that or eat it. Same thing with goose and goose feces. So ducks, all that. Your dog is already interested in those smells. We usually don't want our dogs to go after them because then we have to give our dogs a bath because they're all covered in animal poop, and it's gross. So when we're just using this scent, it's not going to get on their bodies. It's just for them to enjoy their nose. What you're going to see here is these pillowcases are going to be at the end of a dog doing a previous approach to a trigger, which is going to be a person. And at the end, there will be a pillowcase a few feet away, or depending on how comfortable that dog is with approaching. And you'll see the dog using its nose as it smells the bag, the pillowcase. The goal of this is for the pillowcase to kind of be a bridge between approaching something and engaging with their nose with the trigger. So you might see a dog sniffing the bag and then following the scent up the trigger, if it's a person, up their leg. You might see that, and they start to sniff that person as a result. And we don't often like that. That's something embarrassing. Sometimes dogs like to sniff parts of us that are kind of embarrassing for us to recognize that we even have. But yet it gives dogs information, and we should definitely allow them to do that. The same thing when they're approaching a dog. Sniffing should be one of the first things that they do to greet. They can also use ground sniffing or air sniffing. So sometimes they may be using there may be a pillowcase outside, a few of them, to help the dogs walk to, but then there's a dog off around the corner and you can see them air scenting to say that they have, that they know something's there, something interesting is there. And using the air scent to process that, or the ground scent, is very, very, very important for the dog to understand what is happening in their social world. So here we have, like I said, we'll have a dog. I think we have one video where it's just at the end of an approach, the one pillowcase. And then we're going to have another situation where we have several pillowcases with different scents in them, with the dog walking from spot to spot, sniffing. pillowcases in various spots so that they can have something to sniff unique as they're walking around a room full of triggers. Okay, our next thing we want to talk about is an escape clause. Do you want to talk about that? Your dog is learning how to do this pretty good.
This is actually one of my favorites here that we do, invented by Jeannine. So my dogs, like I said, have a really hard time with people. I think I said that earlier. And people coming into their space. So we do a lot of work with the scent being around the triggers. And depending which dog I have, it's really hard for her to sniff a shoe, even look at someone. So we are teaching the dogs to, for me, I like my dog to pick her paw up and touch the top of my shoe, my foot. It's a clear sign to me that she's saying, I need to leave. So teaching her to do that, so we pick the paw up, she picks her paw up and touches the top of my shoe. And when she does, I give her a treat, and then I'm weaning off the treats now and bringing my hand, instead of being on top of my shoe, farther and farther back, and she's still actively picking up and touching. So I still have to give her that cue, but she's able to do it and is understanding what it means. So if we're working in the room, kind of approaching or even sniffing the pillowcases near a trigger, I can start to see now, getting pretty good with her, when she's starting to get uncomfortable. So I'll usually back her up a little bit, because she sometimes can't do the escape cue or clause right where she is, and cue it. She'll touch. I no longer give her the treat. I say, let's go. We retreat back to our mat to safety. I give her some goodies on the mat, and usually she sits and relaxes. So that's her safe spot to be. I've done this in a various amount of places. I do this at home, practice with her touching my foot, taking her to her crate. So if I have company come over, she absolutely cannot be in the room with new people. She will run to her crate and hide. I'll try to cue it when she might know somebody's approaching the house, because they always know before we do when someone's coming up the stairs to ring our doorbell. And I'll try to, okay, let's escape, cue it, and let her go in her crate, give her a stuffed Kong or something, and cover it. You're in there, no one's gonna bother you. So it's a clear communication. She's uncomfortable, I need to escape, please take me to safety.
And the ultimate goal of this, so a couple things I wanted to add. The ultimate goal of this is for the dog to do this on its own. Now, I started teaching this maybe a year ago, and probably a little longer than that. And originally it was where I was having students teach their dog how to put a paw on the foot, on their foot. And that's a little bit, as I've gone into, learned more about dog training and what is things that really help our dogs, I've kind of come to the conclusion that I prefer, with new students that aren't always doing this, to kind of help them find out what their dog is already doing to tell them I need to escape, and go with that rather than spending time to actually teach this technique. I do have a lot of students that are, like Crystal, that are that have done the work with the dog to get the dog to touch their foot, and the dog is doing it on their own without prompting. The dog is in a situation that's scaring them, hitting the foot, and without having to be cued. So I really haven't changed what those people have done, but moving into the future, I do a little bit more about trying to help the caregiver of the dog to determine what their dog is already telling them that is saying, I need help. Most of the time we're not listening to that, so it ends up being cowering in a corner or barking or lunging or whatever. So most of the time we haven't listened to that cue the dog is already giving us. So I try to have my clients go home and listen, what is my dog telling me at first? And sometimes people come back and say, my dog is like putting a paw on my leg, or my dog is leaning up against me, or my dog is stepping behind me and going in between my legs, or my dog is, my own personal dogs will put their paws on my back. They will jump up on me in the front of me to tell me that, you know, hello, I'm over aroused. Yes, my dogs can be over aroused too, but they'll do that kind of thing. But when they are nervous about something, they will come up and put a paw on my back, and sometimes one on my back and one like on my arm. And so I've gone with that with them. It didn't require me to do any training. Again, a hack, the concept of a hack, just something that any dog, that doesn't require you to do a lot of training, that's not requiring a specific technique to help your dog with this. But just finding out what it is that your dog is already communicating to you, saying that I need help, and working with that, reinforcing that for the dog by every time they do that, escaping with them, getting them, leaving leaving with them, taking them to their mat, their crate, out of in a different direction down the street, out of the building at a training class, any of a number of things that they may need, to a bedroom if it's in your house. So again, we did start with teaching this as a specific technique, which is still great, but I find it's just easier for people to just come up with whatever it seems that their dog, we got a lot of little dogs that try to jump up into arms and are literally saying, pick me up, get me out of here. And so we might, use something like that. The dog doesn't have to be picked up, but as soon as the dog puts the paws up on you, let's get out of here. Okay, you need a break, you need to move.
I just want to add something.
Yes.
My one dog often does look at me in my eyes when she's getting kind of worried. And I use a lot of eye contact for things that she can tell me she's ready to go forward. So for me, I don't want to use the eye contact. It's more about watching her body to tell me when she's really stressed. And two of my dogs will flee. They'll just immediately get scared and run. If I didn't have them on leash, I'd never see them again. So that's why I spend a lot of time working on touch my foot. So for me, I just like that. But
yeah, and again, that's what we're saying, is you can use a specific technique, or you can use something that's much simpler and easier for your dog. And so here we're going to show you a video of, actually this is going to be Crystal's dog, actually getting a little bit of help with her escape clause, but like kind of, we're now showing the dog what this means. Like, you're getting nervous, giving her a little help to touch her foot, and then let's go. And here's that video. Okay, and we're almost at the end of our topics. Two more little things that I use in terms of helping. This is kind of very much about helping your dog. So when you see your dog is maybe staring hard at a trigger, unable to stare at a trigger, getting body posture that's telling you they might bark soon, showing maybe a little of their teeth, growling a little bit, or in any way just showing you that whatever is going on now is stressing them, but they're not up to a point that they're over threshold. We use this in conjunction with the escape clause, but basically it's about leash handling. So I think a lot of you out there that have had a reactive dog in one way or another that's going to be barking a lot at another dog, and you know that if you pull on the leash to try to make them walk in a different direction, it makes it worse. Pulling on a leash does not help the dog. And in fact, we have I always use a lot of examples, things that humans might experience to help the dog, the caretaker, understand why makes it worse for a dog. So this is one of the things that we do in a class. So imagine that you were walking down the street with somebody. So we're walking down the street, and all of a sudden I grab Crystal or whoever I'm walking with and pull them away. Another person's approaching in the other direction, and I suddenly grab her and pull her away, and I'm saying, oh no, oh no, oh no. What are you gonna think?
I'm gonna be scared.
You're gonna think whoever's approaching is someone that is dangerous. You're gonna think badly about that. And that's exactly what our dogs feel when we see another dog approaching and we start to tighten up our leash. It's very, very difficult to do that, to get over that. It's the first instinct we have. I do it a lot myself. I have done it many times. I have seen a dog being nice and calm of my own approaching another dog, and I get nervous and I pull on the leash and my dog starts barking. They wouldn't have reacted if I had not had my hands on the leash. So what we do is we teach a couple of little things to do here. And one of them is pretty much one of Kim Brophy's hacks that she teaches in her legs program. And the other thing is just basically, instead of pulling on the leash, you're gonna walk your hand down the leash up to where the dog is, use some food, and help lure the dog back to safety. But sliding your hands down that leash so you're better able to keep some slack in that leash and help the dogs get away. And you'll see here how when this happens, the dog, as you get closer to the leash, the dog tends to look at you right away and doesn't even continue towards the trigger, focusing on the trigger. They immediately redirect and say, oh yeah, you're here to help me, thank you. The other exercise that or hack that we sometimes use in conjunction with that is called stepping up. And so what that is once you get up to the end of the leash, if you feel your dog needs some more help right there, but maybe doesn't need to escape, you just basically gonna put a hand in front of your dog or a leg in front of your dog, or in some way help your dog to be behind you. So you're in front of the dog, you're showing the dog that I got this situation, I'm helping you, and then if they need to escape, you can continue to escape. So what And finally, one of my favorite hacks that I use in training, and I just love this, it's called Walk This Way. And I use this with one of my puppies. She is 10 months old. And I recently had hip surgery, so I was not at home with my dogs for about a month. I was staying with my daughter, so I didn't see my dogs. And my husband was taking care of all my dogs and didn't really get to do anything with them to help, go out and do any training or any walks or anything like that. And then when I did get back home, I still wasn't really able to walk well enough to go and do other classes and things like that. So when I did get her back into a class, I found she had become, in the meantime, very fearful of new dogs. Pretty good with people, but very fearful of new dogs. So I have her in a class, and what this exercise, this hack is, called Walk This Way, is basically letting your dog choose what direction they want to walk in. So what I do is, the way I handle this is basically my dog looks at me and I ask my dog, where do you want to go? Where do you want to walk? And we take a couple of steps in whatever direction she looks in. Once they understand that that when they tell you by looking, in a direction that you're gonna follow them and you're gonna walk with them there, they start to tell you wherever they wanna go. They start to tell you, look at you and then look away. I use some treats in this, like when we take our couple of steps in whatever direction, I never take more than a few steps. Just so that we don't have the dog, running and pulling somewhere. It's all about taking 1 or 2 steps, maybe 3. As the dog gets better with it and more confident, maybe some more. But we start with just little small increments. And as the dog gets to understand this better, she'll look at me and then she'll immediately look away to wherever she wants to go. She won't tell me, I don't have to ask her, where do you want to go? But I usually, I try to let her know we're playing this game by starting out with, where do you want to go? And I've seen her, literally, she has taken me up to within a few feet of another dog in the class. We happen to be working in a class with her that is a CGC class, so all the other dogs in the class are very well trained in terms of good sits and stays and knowing how to be on their mat and not be distracted by other things. So if she walks up to the dog, that dog is not likely to pay attention to her. So I'll look at her and you'll see a video of me working here with her and a couple of another video with a couple of other dogs and their caretakers working on this. But for me, it's basically, where do you want to go? And she'll take me in whatever direction, whatever dog she wants to check out at that point in time. And she's gone from, in the beginning of the class, barking at any dog that moved to wanting to go up pretty close to them and be comfortable and sniff the air around and sniff the ground near where those dogs are. I will often bring a pillowcase with me wherever she's going, so if we get close to a dog, I can give her something to sniff. And we don't at this point go right up to a dog, right up nose to nose. My goal is not to have her interact with another dog like that, not playing, not, that kind of thing. My goal is to have her feel comfortable near other dogs so she doesn't have to bark and tell me she's stressed. So that's, again, the video you're going to see now is me working with just my dog. And it's giving your dog the control, and we will be combining a number of other things. If I feel she's getting too close to another dog and getting worried, I will escape. I will use my leash handling, I will use step up, I will use any of the hacks that we have talked about to help my dog escape to a place where she's safe.
And I just want to add, I've started using Walk This Way in my classes, and my students are loving it and having so much fun with it. For those of you that know me and I talk about my barky dog, how the things I teach in my classes I do in my driveway with her, because outside is very stressful, way overstimulating. So I do my pattern games that I've learned and teach in my driveway, and I've started adding in Walk This Way. So before I used Walk This Way, my dog would pull me all the way down the driveway as fast as she could. So now I ask her, where do you want to go? And guess what? She doesn't always want to go down the driveway. Usually she wants to go the other direction, which is really cool. So that shows me a lot that she's way too stressed. I really don't want to go down that driveway right now. So just a fun little tidbit.
And these are all little hacks that help you. They're all geared to help you understand your dog, what they're saying, what their body language means, and to tell them that you're listening and you are going to set up some situations for them in which you will listen to what they want, and they do not have to do what we think they should want to do because they're a dog. So that's it for today. We don't have time right now actually to take live questions. I don't know how many people will be watching this right now, or how many people will be watching this later on. But this will be on our YouTube channel. This will be on our Facebook page, our website, and our group, CCF, Canine Complex and Friends, CCF, support for, I can't remember the whole name, fearful, reactive, and special needs dogs, something like that. We'll leave all those places that you can watch it, but it will be on our YouTube channel, Facebook page, Facebook support group, website, and probably Crystal's website as well.
Yep.
Thank Dog Services, or her Facebook page. So there'll be plenty of places for you to watch, ask questions. We will get to the questions that you have asked, so just write them wherever, we'll have links to where you can write the questions, and we will get around to answering them as quickly as we possibly can. And thank you for joining us, and those of you that we already work with, we love you all, and we are very much looking forward to working with some new people and helping you into the world of dog-initiated interactions.